Block 42 of the Tunisian sampler Afghan is the chevron block. And the block consists of 3 different rows. The first and second row are done one time, and then the block is completed just repeating row 3. So, the first row, we start out by chaining 31. Then in the second chain from the hook, we insert and bring up a loop. Then in the next 2 chains, we pull up a loop. In the next chain, we insert, we yarn over 3 times, and we pull those through the chain. So we've brought all 3 of those up. Then in the next 10 chains, we bring up a loop. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whoops, went into the same one. That's 7, 8, 9, 10. Insert into the next loop, yarn over 3 times, bring through. Then bring up a loop in the next 10 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then in the next one we insert, yarn over 3 times, and bring through. Well, it doesn't look like I've got 3 there. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And we should have 4 chains left, and we just bring up a loop in each of the last 4 chains. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we should have 37 on our hook. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 6, 8, 30, 2, 4, 6, 37. Okay, we're going to yarn over and draw through the first loop. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through 2 loops 10 times. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then we're going to yarn over and we're going to draw through 3 loops. So there's 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to yarn over, draw through 2 loops 11 times, and we're going to do this the rest of the way across the row. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now we're going to yarn over and draw through 3. And now yarn over and draw through 2, 11 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, thank goodness that worked out in the end. The rows do get easier as we go along. It's just a little tricky at the very beginning. Okay, now row 2, we're going to start with 3 simple stitches. And now we're going to start the chevron, which is the upper hump of the chevron pattern. And in this chain 3, we basically have to bring up 4 loops. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we do 5 simple stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we skip 2 vertical strands. And if you notice here, at the point where we drew through 3 on the previous row, it kind of makes a V with the 2 vertical stitches. Check for that, because those are always going to be the vertical stitches that we skip. So we skip those 2, and then we do 4 simple stitches. 1, 2, 3. And now we need to work on our next chevron. We're going to bring up 4 stitches in this chain series here, or loops. Here's 1, except I caught part of it. 1, 2, 3. Find another stitch to go through here. Guess I'll go right in here. 4. Then we do 5 simple stitches. 1, 2, Then we're going to skip 2 vertical strands, and you can see they're the 2 that are making the V. Then we're going to do 4 simple stitches. And then now we're doing the chevron, and we need to, in this series of 3 loops that we created from the previous row, we need to bring up 4 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to end with 5 simple stitches. For the second half of row 2, we are going to yarn over and draw through 2 11 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to yarn over and draw through 3. Yarn over, draw through 2 11 times. Then we're going to yarn over, draw through 3. Then we're going to yarn over, draw through 2 10 times. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through 3. Row 3, and this is the only row you have to do for the rest of this pattern. You're just going to keep repeating it. You skip. The instructions say to skip the first 2 vertical strands. Well, they are always counting this strand right here, the first one. So you skip this one and this one. And then you start here, and you're going to do 4 simple stitches. And then this is the top of your chevron, and you're going to do this every time. Before the post, in the space in between, you're going to bring up a loop. Then you do a simple stitch into the post, and then you bring up another loop in the space between the posts. Now you're going to do 5 simple stitches. Then we're going to skip 2 vertical strands, and as you can see, they're the 2 that are making the V. Then we're going to do 5 simple stitches. Hold on a second. Getting my yarn caught up here. There we go. So let's see, how many did I do here? Here's 1. This puts us to the top of the next chevron. We're going to bring up a loop in the space before the post. We'll do a simple stitch into the post, bring up a loop in the space after the post. Now we're going to do 5 simple stitches. Skip 2 vertical stitches, and you can see they're the 2 making the V. 5 simple stitches. Bring up a loop in the space before the post. Simple stitch into the post. Bring up a loop in the space after the post. Then we're coming to the end here, we do 4 simple stitches. And then we go through this loop and the end for our last simple stitch. For the second half of the row, we're going to do the same thing we did with row 2. We're going to yarn over and draw through 2 11 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then we draw through 3. Then we yarn over, draw through 2 11 times. Yarn over, draw through 3. In this last series, we're going to yarn over, draw through 2 10 times. And then yarn over and draw through 3. That's row 3, and you just keep repeating that row until your pattern is the length that you want. Okay, so let me show you my block, because there's some slight differences here. Now, as I showed you just a second ago, we started the pattern by chaining 31, and then it slowly got up to 39 loops on your hook to form this chevron pattern. Because I've got 36 stitches here, in mind and the way I'm joining these. I had to make some alterations because I'm basically starting out with 5 stitches more than the pattern calls for. So what I did for my first row, just to get the color on there, is I just did a row of simple stitch for row 1. Then my row 2 became row 1, and I followed the pattern until I got to the point where the pattern ended, and then I just added 5 more stitches on to the end. And so essentially I just followed it exactly the same, except that I had 5 more simple stitches at the end of every single row, rather than trying to split the difference. It got too confusing for me, and I kept starting over, and I just finally said I'll follow the directions and just add 5 onto the end, and that worked out just well. Perfect. So I had 39 stitches plus 5. I had 44 while I was working the entire pattern, and you can see this is what it looks like when it's done. Okay, things to watch for when you're doing this row 3. You're always going to, it says in the instructions to skip 2. I always think in terms of skipping 1 because you can never do anything with the end stitch anyway. You have to, by definition, skip it. So you've skipped your end stitch and then you skip 1 more stitch. You always have to do that at the beginning of every row. And then when you get to this crest, you're always adding a stitch before and a stitch after. So you're adding 2 stitches there and you're skipping a stitch there. Then you're coming down here and you're always skipping 2 stitches. Well, when you've come back and you're yarning over 3, you're actually creating a V. It's kind of hard to tell looking here, but as you're going along creating it, that V jumps right out at you for the correct 2 stitches to jump over when you're skipping the 2 stitches. So always look for that. If it isn't creating the V effect, then you may have gotten over 1 or 2. And then again, your crest is here. Then you go back down, up, down. When I got to the end over here, because of the additional 5 stitches, what I did was I went ahead and I simple stitched 5. Then I put my needle through my hook through 2 stitches at the same time and brought up a loop, and I did it right here. And then I ended up with 4 at the end instead of 5. It doesn't matter whether you do it 1 earlier or 1 later, as long as you're consistent going all the way along. When I got to the end, because I was working with 44 stitches and I had to get back down to 36 in order to continue with my next block. Love it when the phone rings in the middle of taping. Okay, so I had to get back down to 36 stitches, and so to do that, I'm doing 29 rows consistently for my blocks. So in the 28th row, when it came to the upper part, I went ahead on the lower part of the chevron and I continued to skip those 2 stitches. But when it came to the upper part of creating a stitch before and after the simple stitch in the upper portion of the chevron, I didn't make those. So there was 2, 4, 6 stitches that were automatically eliminated, and I needed to eliminate 8. So I did that, and I followed the rest of it. The only thing I eliminated in row 28 were the upper additional 2, 4, 6 stitches. Then in the last row, I went ahead and I continued to skip a stitch here, skip a stitch there, skip a stitch there to get back down to my 36 stitches. And it worked out great. So that is the chevron block, and it is block 42. My goodness, we are zipping along. Thanks for watching.